Welcome to Allie's Attic, where you never know what kind of surprise you'll find in my attic. I'm your host, Allie, and today my surprise is, and I'm so excited, he's a Manitoba boy. I'm a Manitoba girl. I am so excited that we have such great talent in Manitoba, Canada, anywhere, but Manitoba especially. He's originally from Cleethfield, Manitoba, where people don't even know where I'm talking about. It's a small town, but it's Manitoba, and that's all that matters. Please welcome Jason Kirkness. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Ellie.
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Excellent.
Summer's here, just about, right?
It almost seems like, I know for a lot of people listening, they're not really from here, but we're from the part of the world that doesn't really get summer, so I know, like, we get so summer crazy in this province, and it's like this weird 6-week thing where the weather's, like, perfect. And everyone looks forward to it forever. And I know it's like this week, it's just starting to happen.
Yeah, slowly. And yeah, it's taken a while. It seems to, I don't know, it seems like spring just doesn't want to get here. But anyway, so you're a country singer. You weren't always. So tell me all about your journey, when you started getting into music and where you are now.
Well, okay, so I started off with a program called Music for Young Children. And I was just a little fellow, probably even pre-kindergarten, and I started having, I really enjoyed it, and I think from that I moved into piano lessons, and really had a great piano teacher called Victoria, and she really was patient with me and learning, because, you know, I started off probably 4 or 5 years old, and I got through that, and I did a bunch of recitals when I was little, and, you know, playing for the people in the town I grew up in Beefeld, and, you know, I have these great memories of playing hot cross buns in front of 60 people in the music room in the school, and, like, how awful it must have been for them, but I know it really made it easy to, you know, grow up and become a performer. I know around 12 or 13 years old, I started getting into music more seriously, like developing my own taste and preferences for bands, and I guess at that time I kind of got sucked in by my buddy's dad. We were working at the honey farm all day, and then in the evening we would go out in the garage, and I had gotten a guitar as early teens, and I know he would always play these CCR songs and Johnny Cash songs and Bob Dylan songs, and we would kind of screw around in the garage, and at the time we were listening to Nirvana and Led Zeppelin and Pearl Jam, and
All the good ones.
That's what we liked, so we tried playing all that stuff. And I know at the time I was a big Waylon Jennings fan, and I loved Alabama and Jerry Reed. So we were trying to learn all that stuff. And if you grow up in an environment where, like, there's not really genre specific, like if someone says, well, this is country and I only like country, then for me that didn't work.
Yeah.
I liked everything, and I know, like, a lot of my friends at the time in the town we grew up in, punk rock was really popular, and country was really popular, and I didn't really fit into a social circle, and I didn't fit into a kind of specific sort of music. So, you know, developing as a young artist, and people trying to tell you, is like, well, what are you? It's like, I'm a musician. Isn't that
Good enough? Yeah.
And, you know, it's not. And if you fast forward to now, and all the stuff I know about the music business, record deals and management deals, all that stuff, and I get it. It's like, oh yeah, it makes it really a nightmare for a publicist to try to explain this to people. So, I guess what I really wanted to do was make records that sort of reflected who I was as an artist, and I guess that ends up being somewhere between country and rock, and you know, a bit of pop and whatever else, but Yeah, I think I fit in the genre, but definitely on the outskirts. Another thing actually I'd like to add to that is pretty sure when Johnny Cash was making records, and certainly when he was starting out, he wanted to be a rock and roll singer. And I don't know that when he was touring around with Elvis, and I don't know that he heard a difference that, like, well, Elvis is rock and roll and I'm country. And I think at the time he was making rock and roll records in his mind.
Yeah.
And I think country music just kind of adopted it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because some of his songs are very, very edgy. Now, in the early 2000s, Keith Urban's Golden Road album kind of immediately brought you back to country music because the sound of country music has changed. I mean, completely changed. There's a lot of people out there that argue that country music isn't country music anymore. I like the country music that's out there because I like a little bit of pop and a little bit of country and like everything you said. Do you think that people should be embracing it, or should they, want the cookie cutter country that they've been getting from some of the artists they still have?
There's a funny thing that happens, and it only happens with country music. And I don't know why this is a problem or why it's even a thing we're still even allowed to discuss. And that is, rock music doesn't sound like Buddy Holly anymore. Jazz music doesn't sound like Miles Davis. Blues music doesn't sound like Robert Johnson. And country music is the only genre where people are so vocal about, like, it better sound exactly like this, and whichever their preference is. And the funny thing is that a lot of the artists that they name off for, like, the originators are actually people that were active in the 70s and 80s, which is about 30 years later. If records still today in country music sounded like Hank Sr., well, I mean, we have better recording fidelity. Like, we can make better sounding records. And the other thing that people who are making those demands are forgetting is that those statements have been made, and the people that they're asking to make the statement the same way is very creative people. And I know everybody that I've ever met in the country music or otherwise is a creative people. And if you're asking them, like, hey, creative people, just do the thing we like the exact way we like, they're gonna not do that.
Exactly. Well, go ahead.
I was just sort of thinking about, like, how wonderful all country fans are. And certainly, like, how supportive mine have been. I personally have never really run into it, where someone has said, like, hey, we need you to sound more like this or more like that. I think, certainly with my fans, they've always been open to having me sound how I want to and make records that I want to.
And that's awesome. I mean, even the controversy with Shania Twain, because she was the first one that really kind of introduced pop into country, and so many country artists were so against her, and it was just totally unfair. So I'm glad you answered that question, because I figured if anybody can answer that question for me, it would be you. Now, you signed your first label deal in 2010 with Universal EMI, after only 3 years of writing and recording. And you released 4 singles from your debut album, and the debut album's called Life on the Road. Run Me Away, Send My Heart, No Cowboy, and the hit song Leavin'. Now, Leavin's still getting played on the radio and in clubs. It was one of the best songs, I guess, that they decided that you had on that album. And then you went independent. And you're still independent. And do you love being independent as opposed to being signed? I'm asking the tough questions. I guess there's good and bad in both, right?
So being an independent artist is a little bit of an illusion, because I do have a manager, and I do have help with publicity, and you know, we have a great guy helping me out with radio. I do a lot of the radio promoting myself, and I love calling the stations and like getting to know everybody. And there's a lot of people that I've been calling on for 7 years now, and like it's great, man. Like chatting with friends, and I like that part of the business. Mm-hmm. There's a funny thing, like record labels don't serve the same functions that they used to, because a label's job used to be like, you make a record as an artist, the label sells the record as a label, and they made all of their money from selling records. Mm-hmm. So now, ways things sort of work, it's a thing called a 360 deal, where a label takes up to 50% of your tour money, your t-shirt money, your download money. Some take radio royalties, some take songwriter royalties. I guess because like physical music sales don't even exist anymore. And even then, like I think that digital music doesn't even really exist anymore with the way that streaming has come around quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's a double thing. Like, what is it then that a label even sells? Yeah. So a lot of the things that the labels do now, and for better or for worse, I don't have an opinion yet, is that they are in the business of managing your career and managing your image. And I almost think that a good label now who signs you to a 360 deal would, if they're doing a good job, then they would act as your manager, and to some extent your booking agent, and to some extent your publicist, and they would have their hands in all of those things. Mm-hmm. So, you know, being an independent artist is like, it used to be like, well, you could be your own record label, and now it's like, well, you don't even need to be a label, because there's the thing that they used to sell isn't a thing that's even for sale anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a confusing way to say it.
Well, no, it made sense. It does make sense. And I'm glad that you kind of explained it, because when I first started doing this and I was interviewing people that were independent, I was thinking that, you know, they're they're doing everything all by themselves. And I'm finding out that, no, they do have managers, they do have booking agents, they do have publicists. Oh, yeah. And so it kind of made me stop and think, well, that's kind of like a label, but it's not really a label. So basically, you've just taken out kind of like the middle guy who was taking all your money, and now you're more in charge of your career and your freedom of creativity and your image, and you just have people helping you out along the way.
To some extent, yes.
Okay.
But I think a lot of the labels have got into the businesses of management and, to a lesser extent, publicity and booking.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad you explained that, because I've had a lot of them that, you know, oh, well, my manager, and I'm like, oh, you have a manager? I thought you were independent. So it was my skewed thinking of what an independent artist was. So thank you for explaining that, and the way you explained it made complete sense. Now,
I've been accused of a lot of things, Allie. I've never been accused of making sense.
Well, there you go. First time ever. You're going to have to save this now forever, and every time somebody says you're not making sense, just play it. Now, you have you released your new album?
It's coming out on May 30.
May 30th. I'm very excited. So basically, the two songs I'm going to play, people are getting a sneak peek, right?
We were playing two songs. One is my current single on the radio right now, and one that came out 2 years ago.
Oh, well, you ruined all my fun now.
I did.
That's
you
okay.
want to rethink your choice?
No. No, I don't. Well, anyways, your new album is called A Beautiful Disaster.
Yeah.
Where did that name come from? Because I love it.
Well,
I think I'm a beautiful disaster. So where did you get that name from?
do you want the real story or do you want the truth?
The truth would be good.
It's kind of a twofold thing. I think the way it came about was I'm still friends with my old manager Jack, and we hang out more often than we should sometimes. But we really like this place, Carlos and Murphy's, and if you're ever in Winnipeg, you gotta go there.
Yeah,
it's
you
fantastic.
It is.
And we've been going there 3 times a week since like 1990 something.
I've so seen you then. Okay, go on.
So we're hanging out. We're hanging out at Carlos and Murphy's and enjoying our wing. I'm having a beer and he's having a Gibson for a crap up. And he says, "So Kirkness, you gonna put out this record?" And I said, "Yeah, man." And he says, "You think it's gonna be a disaster?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's gonna be a beautiful disaster."
Good story.
So, you start kind of like backtracking through all the lyrics of the songs, and you're like, yeah, it is kind of about like my chaotic life and my love life and story that it was. So this record was originally actually going to be an EP called An American Story, which was when I was going to release it in the States, and I was on a label down there, and that just all went backwards, and I had these 7 songs on my computer for like 3 years, because I had taken some time off being an artist from just like, I didn't want to do it anymore at the end of like the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then my girlfriend, about a year ago, was like, "Hey honey, you got this really cool record on your computer that like no one's ever heard." So I didn't think that the stories were complete, so I wrote 4 more songs and recorded them like about a year ago. Finished them up in January, and had a finished record ready to go in February. So, on the one hand, it took me 5 years to make a record, and on the other hand, it came together pretty quickly.
Okay.
So, that's another sort of like 2 sides of the coin kind of analogy. Like, is it beautiful? Is it a disaster? Was it a long time coming, but came together quickly? And then I guess the other sort of thing is a lot of the stories are about kind of like, I got my life together, more or less, but I'm also kind of drained. So, in the same way, beautiful disaster.
Yeah. Wow.
So all of the things kind of kept coming back to that title, so it felt like the right thing to do.
Well, I love the name. I absolutely love it. Now, this I love because, once again, we're kind of pushing the boundaries. Well, you are, not me. I don't know why I keep saying me. I have nothing to do with it.
We worked really hard on this.
Yeah.
You and I.
We did. I can't sing worth a damn. Anyway, now, music in Nashville studio is played live off the floor with a studio band. We've all seen, what they show when they're recording and so on and so forth. So we're familiar with that. You did it differently. How did you do this record differently this time?
So basically, like, there's a few bands that I really like, and one of them is a band called Big Wreck, and Ian Blaney layers all of his records with like so many different guitar sounds and parts, and I kind of wanted that feel. And growing up listening to the way Jimmy Page made records and the way he talked about instruments is like, there's only one guitar player in the band, but there's so many different guitar parts. And I wanted to make a record kind of like that, where we thought about each part and talked about each part and then layered them and used each sort of sound. Like, we used the Telecaster sound that you're familiar with in country, but maybe we changed that. Or maybe we used a sound that, like, an acoustic guitar sound, but, you know, made it sort of fit in a different space or in a different way that you're not used to hearing it. And I know we use the banjo in a lot of ways that, like, it's maybe never been played like that before. I know that there was a lot of staccato percussion parts that I put in that are actually, you know, a banjo. Uh-huh. So I wanted to make a record that was really full of those sort of layers.
Well, from the two songs, well, actually, I listened to all the songs, but you made, I think it's amazing. I absolutely do. And you and Sean Power, at the Hilson studio, played most of the instruments. Just the two of you?
Yeah, we had a drummer come in, and Sean played the bass while the drummer played the drums, and then I sort of play my acoustic guitar and sing, and then we would keep the drum part and keep the bass part, and then we would just start layering, and I put on a keyboard part, or he'd put on a drum loop, and Sean played a lot of the great guitar parts you hear on there. He's a fantastic guitar player and a fantastic bass player. I played a lot of the simpler sort of atmosphere stuff with the acoustic guitar and the banjo, and we probably split piano duties 50-50 because he's really good at piano. And, yeah, just like, it was sort of like we never had to talk about who was going to play what part. We just sort of we would always be like, well, you got this idea or I got that idea, and the whole thing went pretty quickly. I know I worked in my space a lot, and he worked in his space a lot, and we ended up splitting the producer credit that way as well, because it just sort of felt like we both worked on this record in that capacity as almost like a duo.
Yeah. Wow.
And Sean was like, we had sort of listened to the record after we were finished, and Sean says, you know, if I made a country record, it would probably sound a lot like this one. And I was like, what are you meaning? You did just make a country record, and it does sound like this one. He was trying to be like, as though if it was like a Sean Power record as opposed to a Jason Kirkness record.
That's funny. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm just so getting off track. I get so caught up in what people tell me, but you by far are... I absolutely love talking to you. Now, I'm just going to let the ladies know, because your picture is going to be up on my website. You're a good-looking guy, Jason. Jason is taken, ladies. He is not on the market, just so everybody knows. Now, it's coming out in May. I'm going to be playing 2 songs. And like you said, I'm going to be playing the single Whiskey Kiss. Now, I'm also, before we even get into that, I'm going to urge everybody to start bombarding QX104 here in Winnipeg to play your music. I think it deserves to be played. I don't care if you're on a label. You fit in with their sound, and go nuts with QX, go nuts with iHeartRadio. Just get him on the air, because he deserves to be on the air. If there was ever an artist from Winnipeg that is going to make it big, it's going to be you, after you've taken your break and you've come back and your life is kind of under control. And everybody in Winnipeg and Manitoba.
1, 2.
So yeah, I'm urging everybody, like I said, I've said it I think 10 million times now, urging, please call QX104 for Jason and ask, especially Whiskey Kiss, get Whiskey Kiss on the air, and iHeartRadio, anybody. Just get him on the air, anywhere you are. The good thing, Jason, I have a lot of radio stations that listen to me. QX is one of them. So they're going to hear this, hopefully, if they even bother listening. I have no idea. And what advice would you give any new artist starting out?
So, new artist. That's a good question. I work with a lot of young artists, actually. So I guess I do technically have a day job, and that is producing records. And it's something I've been interested in a long time, and probably just as long as I've been an artist, I've been a producer. And I used to actually own Unison Studios, co-partners with my buddy Jack, on Academy Road here in Winnipeg. And part of the thing about producing records that I really like is the time that you spend when you're, when you're recording and stuff, and when you're swapping stories and all of that stuff, but you get to really know the people that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I always go for with every artist that I've ever produced, and that I always try to, people try to say, well, like, understand that this is a business, and yada yada, and I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that after you're done making a record, then maybe think of promoting your record as a business. But I think when you're making a record, it's very important. If you sound like Brad Paisley, or if you sound like Blake Shelton, if you try to sound like Keith Urban, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to always be yourself when you're creating something new. And I think if you sound exactly like an artist that already exists in the world, like, the thing that people connect the most with, I think, is, when an artist is pouring out their heart and soul, and it's real and honest, and it's, it's them being themselves. I think that's a lot more important than, like, does this song sound like a hit? Does this lyric make people buy the download or stream this song nowadays? Like, I think in this world where, like, so very few people have spots on the radio, and so very few artists are even given, like, international attention. And all of those artists that are doing that, I don't know if you notice or listen to a lot of country radio or any radio, they all sound exactly the same because there's a format. So you can choose to make a song and invest your time and your money into sounding like what is the current flavor of the month and fitting the format. Or you can invest your time and your money and your life into making something that you truly believe in and something you think is really cool. And figure out, after that process is done, how to share that with the world. That, to me, doesn't sound like commerce. So, we live in a great time. Like, I know since I've released Whiskey Kiss, my Instagram following has gone from 600 people to just about 11,000.
Wow.
And I know that I have, between SoundCloud and Spotify and YouTube, almost 300,000 streams. And that's just from one person sharing it on Twitter, and one person sharing it on SoundCloud, and one person sharing, and all of a sudden, like, these things are cumulative. And the way that the world works now, like, is that everything is cumulative.
Yeah.
Cumulative.
Mm-hmm.
Where the things that are good will start to snowball.
Yeah, that is great advice. That is really great advice.
Overnight success doesn't happen.
No.
Unless you pay for it. Because I think money in this world can, accelerate the snowball effect. And I think that people just need to, like, take the time that they need as human beings to develop into the artists that they're supposed to be.
Awesome. I really like that advice. And I mean, you go into it as a passion, so it should always remain a passion, as far as I'm concerned anyways. But like I said, I don't sing, so I don't know. Okay, so we're going to hear Whiskey Kiss. We are going to hear Take Your Picture. Your website, like you said, you can get your music anywhere. You can download music nowadays or stream it, whichever. You are on Facebook, you are on Instagram, and you are on Twitter, so people can find you. Your website's going to be up on my website, so people can find you that way. So, what?
Sneaking a little plug, JasonKirkness.com.
It's gonna be up there anyways. Yes, it worked. Anyway, it is JasonKirkness.com. It will be up on my website. Anyway, Jason, it's been a blast. Even before the interview, we had a great talk. So I thank you so much for your time. I thank you for your advice, which I am so going to look into, and nobody needs to know what that's about, but I thank you anyway. I think you're a great guy, and I am so honored to have somebody from Winnipeg, well, basically Winnipeg, on my show, because we got to stick together, and we got to push each other, and we've got to lift each other up. So I'm glad I got to do that for you.
Thank you very much, Allie.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining me on Allie's Attic. Keep checking my website because you never know what kind of surprises you'll find in my attic. Cheers!